Let's start with the diagnosis and what that was like for you.
Well, basically, in January 2012, I was diagnosed with advanced metastatic prostate cancer, stage 4. The presenting PSA was 509 nanograms per milliliters, to be precise. For somebody of my age at the time, which would have been 54, it should have been between 2 to 4. So you can imagine the dire situation I was in. My doctor, let me put it this way to you. My doctor made a mess of this whole situation, where they should have dealt with my situation much earlier. They dilly-dallied is an expression that we use. In other words, they were not on top of my situation where they should have been. And it was only fortunately that my wife was able to say, no, something's wrong. You need to be on top of this. Well, it turned out she was right and they were wrong. And as I said, diagnosed with advanced metastatic prostate cancer, stage 4. As a result, I was then subsequently able to access, in March of 2012, the Stampede Drug Trials program. Arm G of that program is abiraterone, you know it as Zytiga, and Prostap, which is a testosterone-reducing agent injection.
And how did that trial find you, or you found it? How did that happen?
Well, basically, the consultant suggested to me that there was a trial available and that I could potentially fit that bill. However, the criteria was your information has to be inputted into a computer and it spurns out the arm of the multi-arm program, which is A, B, C, D, whatever. And it then says to you, right, this is the arm of the trial program that you can get on. Well, fortunately for me, I got onto Arm G. Arm G is, as I said, abiraterone and Prostap. That was the wonder drug at the time. And basically, I saw my PSA reduce over a 6-month period to less than 0.1.
Wow, incredibly successful. Wow. What was it like being in the trial? What were some of the difficulties? Were there challenges? How did that impact your schedule, your daily life?
It really was full on. And to say that it was full on would be to describe it this way. You have no life anymore. You are part of that trial. That trial.
It's like a full-time job then.
Exactly. And it dictates to you. You don't dictate to it. Even though you can come off the trial at any given stage, that's how you felt. Boundless amounts of injections, PSA tests, MRI scans, PET scans, X-rays, all sorts of different things.
Now, were you at home? Did you have to commute somewhere every day? Were you long-term hospitalization? What did it require from you physically, going back and forth? Or?
Basically, I had to travel from home, which was probably a good hour and a half to get there, and then obviously to get back. So basically, it was an all-day thing to be at the hospital to undergo the treatment. Then there was always the case of the results as you got them there and then. And you always were apprehensive.
Of course.
Was I going to be in luck, or was I not going to be in luck? And so with that, you had all of that to contend with. Then you had to hang around to get your drugs. So basically, it was an all-day event. And then after that, it was the journey back. And the thing about the journey coming to and going back was I was still in pain in my lower back. And you can imagine driving, and not myself driving, but obviously my wife, she tried to take a lot of care in when she was driving, but occasionally she would hit a pothole.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So you can imagine an hour and a half, and you had that to contend with. No, I was in no state when I got home.
Oh, I can imagine. Tell me more about your wife as a caregiver and how this impacted her life. Because I always feel that, when I talk to patients, that when somebody is sick, it impacts the whole family. And if you're on a clinical trial, I know it's a big commitment and clearly so worth it and an amazing result. But yeah, I'd love to hear more about how this impacted your wife.
Well, she is my heartbeat, without a doubt. Without her, none of this would have happened. And I'll be very open.
She's your hero.
She is my hero, right?
Oh.
And with that, I can only but say she became the breadwinner. She became the nurse. She became everything that
Because you
one
had to leave
needed.
your job for the trial. You had to really turn yourself
Yep,
over.
I was finished. In my career, I was actually finished. So with that now, everything started to go downhill. And you then thought, well, how am I going to get through this? Little did I know how strong she really was. And she showed her strength. For me, one of the biggest concerns and worries was always this, and she'll tell you this. I often had to speak to other men that were going through the same. And we would have very intimate discussions. In those discussions, you had men that would say, my partner or my wife has left me because they cannot handle what's going on.
Okay.
So I would always ask her this question: why do you stay? Why? And she would obviously respond in such a way that, calmed my fears or otherwise, because, I was very emotional because of the drugs I was on,
Of course,
So,
yes.
but she was my rock, without a doubt.
Oh. And I imagine she had to take time off of her job to take you back and forth to the hospital,
Yes,
other
she did.
medications that perhaps she had to go and get for you. And
Yes, indeed.
yeah.
Yes, indeed. And it wasn't easy for her at all. There were times I could actually see the strain on her face.
But you became a team.
Oh, we definitely became a team.
It was like a team effort. And
Without a doubt.
Wow.
Without a doubt. But as I said, she saw everything. She saw the good and she saw the real bad times. And for me, it really hurt in that often I would see, often there were times when I would get the pains. And you can imagine this. You're laying in bed with your partner, your wife, and all of a sudden these pains hit you, and so much so that they literally lift you off the bed.
Oh, gosh.
You arc your back and you raise your whole body towards the ceiling.
Boy.
And to your left, you can see your partner looking at you. And you could see the tears in her eyes and the hurt. And that's all she could do is look on and see me going through that. And I just felt such a way about it.
Wow. So as a team, you got through it. And can you share with our audience what you're doing now and how this whole experience has impacted you?
Well, as I've always said to people, cancer will change you. There is no ifs, there's no buts. It will change you. And for many, it's a change in the right direction, right? Me personally, I've definitely changed as an individual. I was always an individual who was very caring anyway, but now I find myself extra, being very much overly concerned about people's welfare, their ability to understand this disease, and I go all out. And I was described as somebody who throws themselves into the cancer fight. And really, that's what it boils down to. So, yeah.
And I know it inspired you to write, so can you tell us about that?
Well, now, that was something else. The writing really came about because I needed to download what was in my head.
Okay.
Okay? I needed to put something on paper just to help me. Those notes became a diary. The diary eventually became a book. And obviously, I used to gauge the response I used to gauge what I'd written with my wife And there were times when I realized I'd probably written a bit too much. There was maybe a little bit too much in there because I could see the look in her face. So obviously the book got censored in a certain way. But
you went through the process of
I
writing.
went through the process of writing.
And you published.
Published one, and then a couple of years later I wrote another.
All
and
right.
we'll see.
What are the names of the books?
Well, the first book was called Invincibility in the Face of Prostate Cancer,
Okay.
Coming Out the Other Side.
Wow.
And the second one was
Lovely.
called Motivated to Inspire.